The story of Boku Girl revolves around Suzushiro Mizuki and their experiences with love, self, and gender. They'd constantly been mistaken as a girl due to their feminine appearance despite identifying male, before their body was suddenly changed into a girl by a god playing a trick. As they try to hide it from people around them, including their longtime crush, they also learn to live with their new body. The remainder of the story of this manga strongly pushes heteronormative ideas of relationship and gender, and over time his feelings develop not just for their longtime crush, but also for their childhood friend, who is male, which causes them to reinterpret whether they actually want to return to living as male. The story of the manga's concluding decision is one that relates to Mizuki's idea on gender, and pushes the idea where the decision on which gender they will live in permanently is revolved around which of these two people they would prefer to have a relationship with. The crush, Fujiwara Yumeko, or the childhood friend, Ichimonji Takeru. If they chose Yumeko, they would return to living as male, and if they chose Takeru, they would remain in their female body. The reason I've neglected to mention anime and manga until now is partially due to the subject matter's broad, but also niche nature. Sure, you have behemoths like One Piece or Attack on Titan, or the Ghibli classics such as Totoro. But for the most part, individual works within the anime and manga spheres fail to cut a mainstream appeal strong enough to be instantly identifiable and influential. However, anime and manga as a conglomerate are popular within Japan, which means the way trans or gender non-conforming people are presented within the medium is something that is important to consider. Unfortunately, in a lot of ways, the representation that characters falling outside of the gender binary find within these mediums is often poor. A lot of the problems come from the idea of trap characters, characters that look and act feminine to the point where they trick the other characters into thinking they're female, and then have a surprise reveal where it turns out that it isn't exactly the truth. And often, the character is also used as comic relief and not given the character development that other characters in the same show may be afforded. Examples such as Himegoto or Baka to test Shoukanjuu's Hideyoshi Kinoshita are two that spring to mind immediately, but there are obviously more that can be named. However, as with any medium, it would be unfair to suggest trans and gender non-conforming characters are always portrayed poorly. You have Isabella Yamamoto in the show Paradise Kiss, or in terms of challenging gender stereotypes, it would be fair to give at least a passing mention to Kuronosuke Koibuchi in Princess Jellyfish, who, while a cis male, cross-dresses and doesn't constrain themselves to gender binaries, and is a positive portrayal when most male cross-dressing characters have a less pleasant portrayal in comparison. One manga I feel deserves particular mention is Bokura no Hentai, a manga that ran from 2012 to 2015 by the mangaka Fumiko Fumi. The story of the manga follows three people who met after talking on a cross-dressing community website online, and looks at their reason for cross-dressing, as well as takes a look at things like identity and love. You have Osamu Tamara, or Paro, who initially cross-dressed because a guy he liked would not date him unless he dressed as a girl, with the relationship escalating to casual sex. They continued cross-dressing as almost a coping mechanism for the historical emotional abuse that they went through at this time. You also have Ryosuke Kijima, or Yui, who cross-dressed since his sister died as a way of helping their mother cope with the loss of them, but also for themselves, who even before his sister died was ignored alongside the talented model that was his sister. Finally, you have Yuta Aoki, or Marika, who is transgender and identifies as female. They dislike living as male and see that instead of cross-dressing, they're being their true self, while when they wear their male school uniform, it's like they're dressing for a funeral. As the story develops and handles issues like bullying and gender, you see Marika finally come out and live as their true self. Something I personally really like about this manga is its serious take on trans issues by not exclusively focusing on the character's identity of being trans. In this regard, it is reminiscent of another manga, one I would like to focus on in a lot more detail due to being one of the most popular manga/anime that tackles trans issues in a serious manner, and that would be Shimura Takako's Hourou Musuko. Just to make a note of this now, this is a manga that has been ongoing since 2002 until the final chapter in 2013, while also getting an anime adaptation in 2011, which I will look at after focusing on the manga. The main focus of Hourou Musuko is around the two main characters, Takatsuki Yoshino, a girl who wants to be a boy, and Nitori Shuichi, a boy who wants to be a girl, and the story tackles both of these characters' struggles with gender identity. For this video, I'll refer to Nitori with female pronouns and Takatsuki with male ones. Now, Shimura Takako is known for her historical works focusing on LGBTQ issues, with works such as Aoi Hana, Boku wa Onnanoko, and Joshi BL examples of such. And she is very good at telling carefully written stories about sexuality and gender, among other things, for people within the LGBTQ spectrum. The care I feel can be seen in just the first few chapters of this manga, and how it delicately introduces the character's thoughts on their identity to the reader for the first time, and how it does it in a way that even people without prior knowledge of what a person who is transgender thinks and what they are going through, or even what transgenderism is very well done. Which is especially important when, if you consider the date at which this manga first released, was at a time just after the previously mentioned Kinpachi Sensei series had aired, and was before the passing of legislation that allowed for gender changes on official documentation. So to look at these first two chapters, and at Nitori and Takatsuki, lots of their characterization is inferred rather than explicit. They first become friends after being sat next to each other at school, and get paired for homework, so go to Takatsuki's house to do this work. Takatsuki mentions how they don't have any snacks, but then Nitori pulls out some homemade snacks from their bag, which surprises Takatsuki because it is a more traditionally feminine activity to be baking. Then Nitori's gaze is drawn to a dress in the background, which leads to Takatsuki saying that Nitori should try it, and that it would look good on her. As well as this, Takatsuki notes their dislike to this dress, that they don't like wearing that sort of thing. They know I don't like it, but it's all they buy me. Nitori in the end takes the dress for their sister, but as Nitori falls asleep that night, their thoughts are on the dress, and the dream that she has is of wearing the dress before being seen by their sister and called a freak. Now, very little is told to us about the characters in this first chapter and a half that was summarised there, but a lot can be inferred from it. Takatsuki's discomfort from being born female, and the expectations that come from it, can be inferred from what they wear and their offhanded comment about the dress. Nitori's almost longing gaze towards a dress hanging on the wall, and the dream that they had about it, can be interpreted as almost curiosity at this early stage, with little else to go on for their character for now. But mixed with the homemade cookies, does present the idea that this seemingly male character at the time is at least more feminine than would be traditionally expected. You continue past this point through the remainder of just the first volume, and more events occur that help to further cement the idea of these two characters struggling with gender, while also reinforcing certain ideas based on historical societal views on gender. Because Nitori and Takatsuki hang out together often, they get teased about whether they're a couple or not, because a heteronormative idea of societal relationships would see two people of opposite genders as potential partners. While doing more group work, Nitori quite enjoys being teased with a girl's hairband and picks one up on the way home. They then try on Takatsuki's dress while at home, but get caught by Chiba. Takatsuki goes for a short haircut at the same place as Nitori, which really reinforces the at least androgynous look that they have. Then they decide to go out in public in a hand-me-down boys' school uniform. And by the end of the first volume, both of them have gone out together, presenting as their identified gender, with Nitori going out with Takatsuki while wearing a girls' school uniform. Apart from Takatsuki stating that they want to be a boy in chapter 6, a lot of the stuff regarding gender identity in this first volume is inferred. But by the end of this first volume, you can very much interpret how each of the two main characters sees gender and their own identity. Shimura deliberately waits to start putting story emphasis on the other characters till after their identities have been established, so the character can learn about their identities. I think the important thing about how Shimura decides to look at this topic of identity is through how it doesn't treat these two characters any differently to any other character in the story in spite of their identity. Yes, they are currently discovering themselves, and yes, that is the focus of the story. But more so than that, these are two elementary school kids in the story just growing up. And whether you're trans or cis, whether you're gay, bi, pan, straight or whatever, as you grow up, there are universal struggles everyone would go through. Puberty, relationships, friendships, and arguments. However, the manga decides to frame these issues that a general audience would have familiarity towards through a trans lens, and how identifying as trans can affect their lives and have an impact on things they themselves are familiar with from growing up. How, for example, puberty can be especially torturous if you're trans, and see your body transforming in ways you don't want or recognise. Through doing this, through framing the unfamiliarity of transgender identity for many people reading, with the identifiable issues of growing up, it better allows a reader to empathise with the character and understand what they're going through. And I think that's what makes Hourou Musuko such an amazing piece of trans literature worldwide, never mind just when focusing on Japan like I am with this series. Hourou Musuko is a series which in a lot of ways doesn't filter or rose tint or exaggerate the lives of trans people. What we have here is a piece of work that is about and considerate of trans people in a way I've not seen in any piece of work cover since. Each character, from Nitori to Takatsuki to others, each have their insecurities, their own problems, their own personalities, their own lives, and it feels like what we get is a snapshot into the lives of a group of people. None are perfect, and no one in any walk of life is. Personalities change, people grow. Identity grows and morphs and changes with the person as they change. It's truly an incredible piece of work. Because it is so incredible, I'm happy it was able to get an anime during its publication run back in 2011.
いつだって君のその心はいつあることなくそこにいるんでしょう
The anime doesn't cover the story from the beginning, and instead dumped us into the story as they enter middle school in around volume 5, with the relevant moments being dealt with in flashbacks. By being made into an anime, its contents were able to be discovered by many people who would never before have been able to experience it, especially thanks to it airing in the popular Notamina TV block, which had made a name for itself at the time for producing anime that was considered outside of the norm of anime that would generally be produced, and was in turn aimed at a wider audience than general anime fans. In many ways, Hourou Musuko was perfect for this jump for this block, since its topic had a broader social interest. The jump to TV also helped bring new life to Shimura Takako's art, and helped add more emotional depth to some scenes. Even though it starts from a few volumes into the manga, in a similar way to how I mentioned before with that manga, it handles the subject matter in a way to carefully introduce the reader to gender dysphoria and the problems that these characters were dealing with. The anime does this through a scene of Nitori trying on her sister's modelling outfit at home. before being seen by her after she came back for what she forgot, her phone. They fight, and Nitori runs out of the house, being called a freak. They run, and they run, and they run, and they run, the tears swelling in their eyes, jolted back to reality with a jerk when Takatsuki comes to their aid. The scene encapsulates the idea of identity for the character, as well as fear of rejection that I have already mentioned the manga did a great job of introducing in a different circumstance, but to the same desired effect. The soft piano of Claire de Lune, mixed with the soft tap of Nitori's bare feet on the cold nighttime pavement, the attempts to hold back tears but fail. Through sound and subtle touches, the audience is able to empathise with Nitori. Their happiness to look more feminine, that joy, that is what sticks with the audience as their overriding first impression. Unfortunately, for all the success the manga was able to have, and for all it aired in one of the most popular animation blocks and tackled the source material and subject matter superbly, it unfortunately got what were at the time record low ratings for the TV block during its 10th episode, though the effect of the March 11th earthquake that happened around that time should be considered in this case. Even before that, however, the ratings had averaged on the lower end of the spectrum for the block, though there would certainly be numbers considered acceptable considering the late night time slot it was shown within, which in the end would really lead to the thought that while the manga had been successful at introducing the topic into the public psyche and engaging and educating people on trans issues, its anime was less successful at this. I think as much as I bring up things like Hourou Musuko or Baka no Hentai, and how they think they've been good at giving nuanced looks on trans lives through fictional story, in a lot of ways the mediums of anime and manga are less sympathetic to trans people, with these being the exception rather than the rule. The rule is things like Bokugirl's heteronormative framing of relationships and gender, as well as its fan service. The rule is running gags and punchlines for characters like Hideyoshi Kinoshita, and this rule is in some ways detrimental for public perception of trans people. I think it says a lot when the last anime with a positive portrayal of transgender non-conforming people as a focus of the story came 6 years ago. Sure, you've had characters that can fit this mold and may even be positively shown since, but for the most part, you have to go all this far back to find a show overshadowed by big hits of the same season like Madoka and unpopular compared to other shows even within the same block, to find a show that fits and is positive for trans people as its focus, and that's not good for a medium. After looking at anime and manga, you're now into the current day, 2017. I started this video series with an aim of chronicling how trans rights have changed in Japan over the years, and how media has facilitated this change. Over that time I've tackled a lot of portrayals, big and small, but all ones that have shifted their mediums and or the general public into shifting their own views. I also wanted to paint a picture on how life is for trans people within Japan, when English sources on the topic are painfully limited and few in number. And over the 90 plus minutes, I have a genuine hope this has not only introduced people to watching the shows that I've mentioned to find new shows that they want to try, but to give people the insight on how trans issues differ quite a lot from how they are portrayed in the West. There are similarities, but there are those differences. Of course, there's no way I could give a full portrayal without taking a step back and looking instead at the past, to the present and the future, and look at where we currently are with not just trans media within Japan but also trans rights, and how things look like they're going to develop in the following years for recognition for trans people, especially as we look forward towards the 2020 Olympics that are looking to be held in Tokyo. A lot of Japan's progress on trans rights came within the last 20 to 25 years, all things considered. Before that, there was some visibility in entertainment arenas and bar culture, and through magazines targeting the community there was some activism, but until the advent of the internet, there was little movement towards trans acceptance in the general populace. Following that though, there was a huge explosion in the late 90s as celebrities began to come out and sexual reassignment surgery became legal again, with the topic and the push for equality becoming more mainstream. The reason this video series focused on the media when looking at trans rights is due to how ingrained the trans identity and push for equality is synonymous with bar culture and entertainment. While the topic had rose to prominence, it was due to the hugely popular portrayal of dysphoria in Kinpachi Sensei that helped the debate shift to pushing for more legal equality that culminated in the ability to change the registered gender of individuals in some conditions thanks to 2003 legislation passed by the Diet. Since then, awareness and acceptance has grown from more and more positive media portrayals for gender non-conforming and trans individuals. While I've not covered them in this video series, there's other more current works that are continuing the debate on trans issues into the current day. Hanayome wa Moto Danshi is an autobiographical manga by the mangaka Chi, covering their own experiences with growing up with dysphoria and hurdles to relationship, transition, and more. The manga is also more educational on issues related to transition and dysphoria from a frank, personal, and quite funny perspective. It makes this educational look at transgenderism with personal topics, like how she was able to meet a husband, and even these go on about the anxiety that even trying to live a normal life can cause. Relationships and wanting to go out with someone isn't as easy as asking for someone who is just or is transitioning. They can be burdened from having previously lived in the opposite gender, fearing that once they know, the person will hate them. Gomenne Seishun is another contemporary work worth at least a passing mention. A J-drama with comedic elements about teacher Heisuke Hara's guilt over a high school incident, leaving him unable to leave his hometown and leading him to teach at his old school. His school, an all-boys, low-achieving school, is set to merge with a high-attaining all-girls Catholic school next door, and he has to teach a co-ed class and help to organise a joint school festival to show students from the school can cooperate. However, a fire at the school's chapel 14 years prior led to the banning of contact between the schools prior to this proposed merger. The reason the show is worthy of mention is due to the underlying story of a student named Nayameru, who was initially presented as an effeminate gay character with a crush on the student body president. However, as the story continues and gets to episode 7, they begin to attend wearing the Catholic schoolgirl's uniform, claiming that they're gay, but in my heart I feel like a girl, I am attracted to boys. This was mostly supported till their father saw them wearing the uniform and negatively reacted to it. Being the head of the school board, he cancels the merger between the schools, making the issue one involving everyone, and what follows is an arc of understanding and acceptance from her father. And we also get to learn more about how Murai identifies, about how when they saw the girls at the Catholic school, they thought not of their appearance, but how they wished they could dress and look like they did, and how they'd always felt different. And the way it handles the twin storylines of Murai and her father, and how it handles gender identity, are both with care that's unusual for the time slot and target audience of the drama, being for a younger audience targeted more at teens. Some of the comments made by the students and older adults reflect the current situation and a sign of the shift seen in daily life regarding these issues, with the younger students more accepting, and older adults less aware of the issue and in turn less understanding. Heading away from TV into music, Secret GUYZ are a fascinating male idol group growing in prominence in recent years from the Stardust agency, due to how the group is made up entirely of female-to-male trans men. You find groups like Fuusen made up of women dressing male, but this group is different due to how it is made up of trans men. Using music, the group uses their platform not just for entertainment, but to promote awareness of sexual minorities. As well as performing, they've mentioned previous experience of dysphoria in interviews, and thought being idols would allow them to promote awareness for LGBT issues in a less serious manner. And their growing popularity, with their most recent single charting within the top 10 in the week of release, showing that more people are paying attention to them and in turn their message. But the thing is, to focus on legal rights, since a revision to the aforementioned legislation, The legal situation has not changed for trans people despite the activism that has occurred, especially in the last 20 years. There's still no legal protection for trans people, which can cause problems for them getting work and keeping it in some circumstances. Back in 2016, an employee working at Yakult in Japan sued them for over 3 million yen in damages after claims they were forced out and suffered depression due to their treatment regarding their gender identity. The worker had changed their legal name in family courts, but had asked their employees to change their name on health insurance but to remain using their male name in the workplace. Instead, their name tag at work was changed without consultation, and in exchange for using a locker room used by executives, they were forced by their employers to come out to their co-workers against their will. In the pursuit of fairness, I should point out that the company stated to Kyodo News that the employee consented to telling company colleagues of her gender dysphoria, and that the case is still within the legal process at the time of making this video. The employee is suing under claim that their human rights were violated, but this is due to how there are no laws protecting trans people from workplace discrimination, and therefore there is no law that states that the actions allegedly taken by Yakult were inherently illegal. And this is a huge barrier to trans people being more visible and open regarding their identity. If they do so, there's no guarantee that their work life will be inhibited, that they could get fired and lose their income, that they won't be harassed in the workplace, anything like that. So in fear, they just may not come out at all, not allowing them to be their true selves. And this is having a negative impact on their mental health. And even if they do come out, they will only come out privately to some people and continue to portray a public cis persona. This may not be everyone, but it is completely understandable for anyone to not come out and do this. The situation isn't necessarily any better in schools. Few teachers in schools will openly teach pupils about LGBT issues, and surveys conducted between July and October 2016 found 60% of pupils identifying as a sexual minority were bullied in school, with many teachers refusing to help bully pupils because they think of their identity as a choice, and that the choice is disrupting harmony within schools. Just over 1 in 10 actually incorporate LGBT education within lessons in Japanese schools. In a report produced by Human Rights Watch regarding LGBT issues in school, there is in-depth discussion on homosexual and transgender bullying within schools and the lack of support that is offered. To quote the report itself, there is no comprehensive training for school staff, and the guidelines that do exist are non-binding suggestions issued in April 2016, which predicate respect and accommodation for gender identity on the diagnosis of a mental disorder. Although there has been, and still is, a lot of problems for trans people despite all this video series has discussed, there is reason to think change can happen. Signs that Japan's view on the issue are shifting towards acceptance, and the barriers are beginning to fall. There have been pushes from the Ministry of Education to improve the situation for transgender people within Japan over the last few years, with more discussion on LGBT rights occurring within the school atmosphere between teachers and pupils, as well as outside organisations and pupils. Within just the last few years, ordinances have come from the Ministry of Education to allow pupils to go to the bathroom matching their gender identity, and more recently, inclusion in new anti-bullying guidelines specific protection for pupils bullied on the basis of gender identity or sexual orientation. Also, in something that should be seen as a sign that there is more acceptance, more people are looking for help to deal with issues of dysphoria, with medical visits nationwide rising 45% in the years up to the end of 2015. And there has been an increase in the number of support groups helping people who suffer due to their identity. Tell Japan are a great mental health charity within Japan, focusing on helping people with mental health problems, but also help people and their families whom are within the LGBTQ spectrum, with informative lectures and support groups for people regarding LGBTQ issues. LGBT Youth Japan provides support for LGBT youth, and there have been many regional support groups that have popped up, more so in recent years, for LGBT people. Rebit are another LGBT support group who are based in Tokyo, who hold events such as LGBT-specific coming-of-age ceremonies, and have visited schools to talk to students. And I think the biggest sign for change in terms of LGBT progression is the upcoming 2020 Olympics. Pushing for more equality in the workplace and in legislation is a goal heading towards these games. In the political sphere, the LDP, in a statement from their chairman in 2016, have made it a focus to help eliminate discrimination to LGBTQ citizens, and that it is the government's obligation to help foster understanding. And cross-party groups within the Japanese Diet have been set up to look at legal rights. Considering the signs of progress and support in recent years, and then the Education Ministry ordinances to be more considerate of trans and LGBTQ people, as well as progress within the National Diet with a goal to change before 2020, the possibility of protections being wrote into law to help breach the gap in legal equality within the next few years is strong. For a long time, as I've been making this final video, I've been thinking about how to end it. I've used this series to look at media and how it's gone in tandem to, and helped contribute to, the improvement of trans rights. A lot of the improvements and acceptance of trans people have come because of exposure, thanks to the media, along with activism of people in their own accord. But just stating that didn't feel the right way to satisfyingly end this. So I decided to think about how we should look at how trans rights are now, with increased acceptance but no legal protection, and where, based on how things are now, the path to equality is looking to go within Japan. And I think I found a word that I wanted to end this video with. Modern day Japan, with the upcoming Olympics and public discourse on the topic, is on the precipice of an LGBTQ revolution. Not just a revolution for trans people, but with things like gay marriage starting to receive majority support with people within Japan, and companies within Japan extending company benefits to same-sex couples. And how policies such as how in March, Kirin introduced a policy allowing workers 60 days paid leave for sex reassignment surgery. The winds of change in Japan do seem to be shifting towards equality, towards acceptance. So I thought of my word. And the word hope